We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Saturday. We had one hell of a week, a lot of stuff happening, and it looks like this upcoming week is going to get even crazier with Fani Willis likely to be issuing some indictments to Donald Trump and any number of other folks. I got to tell you, as I start doing this podcast, I'm a little angry right at this point. And I'm angry at myself. Nobody else, just me. Earlier in the evening, I did a podcast with a gentleman that's been on the show here before, Dennis. He has his own podcast, asked me if I'd be a guest. No problem. Happy to do it. So then afterwards, I have to record this podcast. So I do that. I mean, I record the whole fucking podcast, hour and a half spent doing it. I get it ready to try to put up and make it available to you to listen to. No fucking audio. No audio. I'm trying to wonder why the hell did that happen? And much to my surprise, it was something I fucked up. So the only person I can be angry at is me because I fucked up. But I have a responsibility to you folks. So here I am doing it again. I'll try to have a brighter perspective as I go through this podcast, but I'm pissed off at myself because I'm going to have to do this all over again. And I'm happy to do it for you folks because you are expecting it and it needs to be there. But God damn it, old people can be so fucking stupid sometimes. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's get to business. Let's talk about what we're talking about. We're going to start out with emails, and we have some of those. First one comes from Jace, our friend from Texas. He says, "Hey, Mike, just read an article in The Hill where Joe Manchin is now saying he's considering leaving the Democratic Party because, in his words, it's becoming so bad. Give me a fucking break. This sorry SOB has been nothing but a roadblock for Dems to get shit done. He sees the writing on the wall that he will not probably win his reelection. It is West Virginia, and I'm surprised he's lasted this long. He said he's considering becoming an independent in a business for himself, if you ask me. Timing is suspicious as fuck. He wants to hold this over Joe and the Dems' head like Sinema did. Let's get rid of both these clowns. West Virginia may be lost, but I think Arizona is still in play. Manchin wants to run on the no labels ticket, need to change it to no chance. As mentioned before, both Dems and repukes don't like him. Adios, self-serving Joe. Jace from the once great state of Texas." Yeah, I'll agree with you. I think Joe Manchin is getting a little upset that he's no longer the focal point or the center of attention like he was when he was kind of the pivot point for the Democrats. He did everything he could to obstruct the Democrats while he was the lone man in Senate to tip the balance, if you will. And so Joe probably is not going to win in West Virginia. And just so you understand what that means is Joe is technically a Democrat, even though he doesn't act like one. But that means it's probably a Republican that's going to get elected in West Virginia, save for a miracle. So we will lose that one seat. But as you said, I think Arizona's in play. I think Arizona's very well in play. Ruben Gallegos is running against Sinema, and I think he's out fundraised her. He's done everything, and people hate her in Arizona. So she's done, and Ruben Gallegos will probably maintain the Democratic position for the Republican Party or for the Democratic Party in the Senate. So that's the good news. You know, as I've said about Joe Manchin before, he's in this no labels party. But here's the thing, this no labels party went out and said, listen, if Donald Trump looks like he's going to win, then we'll probably pull back. Well, I thought you were no labels. Clearly, you're a section of the Republican Party, and what you're there for is to obstruct things and try to cause problems for Joe Biden. I will tell you this. Joe Biden's got this presidential election well in hand. He's going to win by a lot, regardless of if the no labels party comes into the election or not. The fact of the matter is the No Labels Party will not be able to gain enough money or traction. They're going to make noise now and try to fuck with Joe Biden. He's not buying it. But when it comes down to it, they won't even be in the mix. They're going to lose a lot of money, and they can't possibly want to do that. So you're right about that, Jace. He's a piece of shit. He should be gone. He can go off and be an independent, but then he's got nothing. He'll never be the center of attention like he insists he needs to be. So what's going to happen is he'll fade away into nothingness, and he'll go out and grift some money some other way. He's probably made enough money to live very comfortably, but he needs to be out of the Senate, even if that means getting a Republican to replace him. Now, there is a Democrat that's running, but I don't know what the odds are. It's West Virginia. That's as red a state as you're going to find. So we just may have to deal with that situation. But again, it's not different. Even though Joe Manchin was a Democrat, he didn't do anything to benefit the Democrats. He was more of a Republican. So, Joe, you can go pout and do what you want to do, but nobody needs you anymore. You're done. You're gone. Go sit on your fucking boat that some rich company bought for you, and just fucking relax. You're old enough to retire, and this should be a sign for you to fucking retire. All right, the next one comes from Gordy. He says, "Good morning, Mike. I'm sitting here listening to your latest episode and wondering if you heard about one of Utah's Trumplafucks do the bidding of Diaper Donnie. Let me explain. There was a dipshit here that lives right in the heart of what is referred to here in Utah as Mormonville. Yep, Provo, Utah. Anyway, he's been threatening President Biden since February, and the FBI has been watching him and his violent threats. President Bush is in town today. That was Thursday. And they went to talk to this piece of shit yesterday. Well, the tough guy wouldn't come out of the house to talk to them. So he was being a tough guy. Well, they shot and killed him. Just wondering if you saw this story and would like your thoughts. Keep tightening the screws on Donnie and the Republicans. Gordy. Yeah, I did see the story. In fact, I think I talked about it a little bit yesterday. Here's a guy that's had his mind co-opted and controlled by the Trumplafucks. He believed everything they said, and he fucked around and found out. Somehow he thought he could go to social media and threaten the president. I think anybody with a half a brain knows if you do that, you're going to have the FBI at your door, and that's exactly what happened. But I tell you what, if the FBI comes to your door, just do what they tell you, because you'll end up dead, as this guy ended up dead. That's the weird thing about the Republicans. They're not only hurting this country and hurting Democrats, but they're hurting themselves. I mean, you think about it, COVID, 1 million people died. A lot of those people didn't get vaccinated because the Republicans told them it was bad. Well, they're dead now. Good job, Republicans. This is what I've said about the Trumplafucks. We're not going to get the big crowds of people that are going to attack buildings or people, but you're going to get this one or two crazies every now and again. And this is the essence of one of those guys. He thought he was a tough guy. He believed the whole bullshit that we're going to start a civil war and we're going to take over this country. No, you're not, motherfuckers. You're weak as hell. You're one guy. You were easy to take out. You were like shooting ducks in a pond, like Ashley Babbitt at the Capitol. You got what you deserved. I feel sorry for your family, but you let this motherfucker run roughshod, so he got what he deserved. All right, the next one comes to us from Eric. And actually, I think I may have read this one before, but I'm confused now, and I'm pissed, and I'm going to read it again because I think it is very appropriate given what we've got going on now. He says, "Hey, Mike, the more we hear about Judge Aileen Cannon, the crazier it sounds that she is a federal judge with a lifetime appointment. In her limited time as a federal judge, it sounds like she has mishandled every case that she has been involved in. She violated a defendant's constitutional rights by closing the jury selection to the public. She forgot to swear in the jury in the case. There's everything involved in the special master case." And you're absolutely right, Eric. I'm not going to read the whole thing because I'm sure I read it the other day. But I don't know. I'm fucking 63. I tell people I can remember the 70s like it was yesterday, but I frequently forget to zip my pants after I go to the bathroom. So I can only do what I can do. But Aileen Cannon has become an immense problem. And I don't know if it's as much about her being a sycophant to Donald Trump. I think that's part of it. But I think it has a lot to do with she's absolutely inexperienced. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's guessing, she's shooting from the hip. And you just can't do that when you're a federal judge. A federal judge, no less, that is going to be overseeing one of the biggest criminal cases in the history of this country. I got to think that the 11th Circuit is going to feel a little embarrassed by this. She'll be overturned on most things. and then ultimately they will try to get her to recuse herself, or they'll just boot her directly. I really believe that's what's going to happen. I think Jack Smith has been smart enough to anticipate some of the things she's doing. I think he set traps for her, and I think he's going to play this out exactly the way he wanted to play it out. But as I've told you before, I'm not as worried about the Florida case now that we have what's going on in Washington, D.C. And that Judge Chutkan, it almost doesn't matter in Florida because Chutkan's going to put him away forever, meaning Trump and all his little fucking cronies. All right. The last email comes from, he signs it, fellow boomer, Phoenix, Arizona. He says, "Hi, Mike. I remained an ardent listener and never miss a release of the Rational Boomer podcast. Today's show with Lisa was fantastic. I enjoyed listening to two rational boomers engaged in a frank discussion on political issues having an immediate effect on our lives. Let's call this episode the Mitch and Diane Show and file it under fan favorites. I do hope that Lisa will return to the podcast in the near future. Fellow boomer, Phoenix, Arizona." Yeah. Lisa was on the show yesterday. She was a guest. She was a little nervous at first, but she had nothing to be nervous about. She did a fantastic job, and I appreciate her coming in to do the show. Now, initially, she wanted to see if we could get somebody else on the show along with her because, again, she was nervous. And that person was going to be Denise. You remember Denise. Denise is the woman with a history background. Her father's a professor or something, and she knows a lot. And she brought some interesting facts to some of the shows we did. In fact, she still is the one guest on the show that has been most listened to of all 770, whatever the fuck, Rational Boomer shows. She's very intelligent. She's very entertaining, and she will be on the show maybe in a week or two. We've talked about that. She couldn't make it with Lisa last night, but it didn't matter because Lisa did a hell of a job. And thank you for joining me on the program. And I'm with you, fellow boomer. It was a good show. She did a great job. All right. Now, yesterday we had this hearing in Washington, D.C. Judge Tanya Chutkan was overseeing this hearing. And of course, she is overseeing the upcoming trial for the January 6th insurrection and Donald Trump's indictment in said case. This meeting was to talk about an order of protection that Jack Smith wanted over Donald Trump. Jack Smith was concerned about Donald Trump exposing evidence and such. And keep in mind, a lot of this evidence is coming from the grand jury, and that is supposed to be secretive. So you can see where the problem might come in there. So Jack Smith came in, asked for an order of protection. Donald Trump's team, while they tried to delay it, didn't work. They had to come in on Friday. They said it was too broad, that order of protection. They seem to think that Donald Trump should be able to do whatever he wants with evidence and talk shit in the case, like he's always done. Unfortunately for him, Judge Chutkan isn't having it. That's not how it's going to work out this time around. Now, the judge in Donald Trump's January 6th coup attempt case yesterday ordered him not to reveal information that prosecutors turn over to his legal team from grand jury testimony, a prohibition that likely will apply to a sizable portion of the discovery material he receives in the coming weeks. They're turning over all the discovery material. This is a lot of sensitive materials. Sensitive materials may be used by the defendant and defense counsel, defined as counsel of record in this case, solely in connection with the defense of this case and no other purpose, and in connection with no other proceeding without further order of this court. And that comes directly from U.S. District Court Judge Tanya Chutkan. She made her order of protection. It was only 5 pages. That's all she needed, but she made her point, and she's a serious judge, unlike Aileen Cannon. Now, you have to understand what she did here. She kind of gave Donald Trump's team a win at first, but she did it for a reason, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But the thing about it is she agreed that what Jack Smith was asking for was overbroad. And frankly, Jack Smith is a pretty sharp guy. He's probably done tons of negotiations, so he probably knew what he was asking was too broad. He expected that he'd have to negotiate it down. He asked for the world and then negotiated it down to exactly what he wanted. I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's what happened with Jack Smith. So the judge then gave it to the defense team, and I'm sure they felt happy about it. But what she did do is she said, look, it can't cover everything, but it's got to cover all the sensitive materials for obvious reasons with the grand jury and such. Now, what you have to understand is the vast majority of all the evidence in this particular case would be considered sensitive material. So while they did get a little win, it wasn't a big win because all the sensitive materials make up most of the case. Now, these sensitive materials include information gathered from still sealed search warrants as well as grand jury testimony. Chutkan's written order mirrored her statements during the Friday morning hearing. She said all this, but it was also in the order as well, the written order. Prosecutors had asked Chutkan to stop Trump from speaking about any evidence handed over to his lawyers as part of the pretrial process. Now, while Trump had wanted the right to use all of it as he's running for the presidency, Chutkan, what she did is she turned down the prosecutor's request for a blanket prohibition, but made it clear to Trump's lawyers that his desire to run for president will not get him out of following the standard rules imposed upon felony criminal defendants in federal court. She basically said, you're running for president? Well, that's your day job. What's important, what's the priority, is that you are a criminal defendant. No better, no worse than anybody else. And that's not what Donald Trump wants to hear. He's all about getting special treatment because that's the only way he can win. Ask Aileen Cannon down in Florida. Now, she also cautioned that she will take seriously any statements Trump makes that could be construed as intimidating a witness. Trump a week ago posted, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." He also doled out some threats for Michael Pence. And unfortunately, Michael Pence will probably be a star witness in this case, so he's going to have to shut his mouth with regards to that. Now, Trump, as he reviews sensitive materials, also will not be permitted to have with him a photocopier or even a phone that he could use or photograph documents. And if he takes notes on what he's seen, they will have to be reviewed by his lawyers to make sure they do not identify the witness. And this is an important point with regards to his lawyers, because his lawyers are just as much at risk as he is. They are supposed to have some control over their client. And if he goes off half-cocked, giving out names, giving out evidence, making threats, trying to taint the jury pool, Well, they're going to have to answer to it too. And if they have to answer to it, they could very well get sanctioned or they could lose their law license. So this has got to be a tough situation for the Trump lawyers. I don't know why they even want to be in this situation, but they are. And it's not a positive thing for them. Now, she went on to say, during any time that the defendant reviews sensitive materials outside the defense counsel's presence, the defendant must not have access to any device capable of photocopying, recording, or otherwise replicating the sensitive materials, including a smart cellular device. She's basically saying, yeah, Donnie, we know what the fuck you'll do, so we're not going to let you have any way that you can copy these things. Now, defense counsel must also ensure that all sensitive materials are collected and safeguarded when the defendant is no longer reviewing them. And we know Don's reputation when it comes to important or classified documents. This is going to be interesting to see if they get to hold him to that. Now, Chutkan also agreed to set rules for the relatively small amount of classified materials that prosecutors intend to use in the case on August 28th hearing, which is when she's expected to pick a trial date. Now, in this indictment, Trump is charged with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to obstruct an official proceeding, obstructing an official proceeding, and conspiring to violate civil rights. A couple things that are interesting about this. First of all, they're getting together on August 28th to decide the trial date. Judge Chutkan had told both the prosecution and the defense team that they had to come up with a date on their own as to when they think the trial should start. Jack Smith the other day came up with a date of January 2nd. He said that would work because that gives the defense 7 months to go through the discovery, and that seems reasonable. We're still waiting to hear what Donald Trump's team is going to ask for as a start date. I have a feeling it's going to be, hey, how about never? Yeah, that's possible with Donald Trump. But I will tell you this, Judge Chutkan won't be having it. She's not playing any games here. And she made an interesting point. She's worried about Donald Trump going out there and flapping his lips and threatening people and releasing evidence. And she said to Trump's legal team very specifically, said, listen, if your guy is doing this and he keeps breaking the rules, what that means to you is this case is going to come quicker. In order to protect people, if I have to start this case quicker, I will. So you might want to have your boy keep his mouth fucking shut. Now, we know when you tell Donald Trump to do something, he will do just the opposite, just to prove that he's a tough guy or he's more powerful, which he is not in this case. So what is Judge Chutkan going to do if he keeps flapping his lips? Well, it's hard to drop the hammer right away. He does it and then they put him in jail. That's just not going to work that way. Whether we think it's a good idea or not, that's just not going to happen. So, like I said, in the beginning, she kind of gave the defense a minor win by saying, okay, it's too broad. We'll narrow it down to just sensitive materials. I've listened to a lot of legal people suggesting what would happen if Donald Trump keeps talking and keeps breaking the order or violating the order of protection. What'll probably happen is this. If he violates the order of protection the first time, she will bring them into court and they will say, you know how I loosened up and kind of went to your side, to the defense? Yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to give the prosecution team everything they want. You can't do anything. You can't say anything. It's all covered under this protection order. Then if he does it a second time, what they'll do is she'll bring Donald Trump in and his lawyers and say, listen, you're forcing my hand here, buddy. I'm going to tell you right now, if you violate this order of protection one more time, The only option I have is to put you in jail. So understand, I'm telling you right here and now that if you violate this order of protection, the next step is going to jail. So now you know exactly what to expect. Now, if I have to put you back in jail, that's on you, motherfucker. That's on you. I have a feeling that's the way it's going to go. And based on what we've seen of Judge Chutkan, I don't think she's playing around. It would be a tough situation to put him in prison, but maybe that's what he wants. Maybe he wants to play the martyr. If that's true, he's never been in prison because that's not a place you want to be. And like I said before, it'd be ironic if they still play this game trying to delay the trial, which they won't be able to do with this judge. But even if they were trying to do it, can you imagine Donnie Trump sitting in jail until his trial? And while his legal team is trying to delay it, that would be fucking hilarious. That would be just fucking amazing. So Judge Chutkan set this out there, told them in no uncertain terms, Donnie Trump won't be playing these games anymore, or there's going to be accountability. There's going to be a price to pay. It'll be interesting to see what Donald Trump does with that. Donald Trump is known for breaking the rules every time. This man cannot shut his mouth. In fact, when he was at a rally recently, he went to them and said, they're trying to take my First Amendment rights away. Well, the judge answered that in this hearing too. And she said, I'm not taking anybody's First Amendment rights away from them, but you have to understand that First Amendment rights aren't absolute. You can't have First Amendment rights and then commit a crime by opening your mouth. There's going to be accountability for it. So she's not buying into the First Amendment rights thing. And that's the main part of their whole fucking defense. So can you imagine how this is going to go? If that's their strongest defense and the judge has already told them that, yeah, that ain't shit. She told Donald Trump, as I said earlier, that this court case is going to be run like any other court case, and you're simply a criminal defendant. You'll be treated as such. They started talking about, well, he's going to be busy. He's running for president. She said, that's your day job. It doesn't matter. This court case, this trial takes precedence over everything you do. You're expected to comply with everything we tell you to do in this court case. And this has got to be making Donnie Trump a little fucking crazy. He always thinks he's got some wiggle room. He always thinks that he can do something or bully somebody or push somebody. He's not going to do that with this judge. As much as Aileen Cannon is a joke down in Florida, as I've said before, it almost doesn't care. It doesn't matter. I don't care. Because what's going to happen in Washington, D.C. will be enough to put him away forever. In just those 4 charges that he has against him. If he got the maximum with all 4 charges, he'd be in jail for 55 years, which is well beyond his expiration date, I'm sure. Like I've told you before, he only needs to be charged with one thing. If he's in jail longer than 4 or 5 years, he ain't coming out. He's not of healthy mind. He's not of healthy body. And this will fucking destroy him emotionally. I'll be surprised if he ever makes it to the point where he was walking into jail. He'll still be rattling his mouth, but you know what happens to people when they go to jail? They just go in and they fade away and nobody thinks about him again. I'll tell you this, the Republican Party is probably hoping for that because Donald Trump is dragging down the Republican Party. They know it. They're just too afraid to go against him. At some point, they're going to have to, but they probably won't do that until he's in prison and he can't do anything to them anymore. I don't know really what they're afraid of. Maybe he does have a lot of stuff over a lot of these Republicans. I don't know. But if he does and he starts freaking out and he thinks he's going to jail, oh, everybody's going to come down. And the thing about it is what's going on with this case in Washington, D.C., it's only just we're just scratching the surface. This one indictment of Donald Trump is just to get it going quickly and get him through the process. As I said, Jack Smith wants to start it January 2nd. Donald Trump doesn't want to start it at all. I'm sure the judge will come with some compromise. It may not be January 2nd. Maybe it will be, but it'll be February, maybe at the worst. They're going to want to get this in and get it done. And Jack Smith has said this case should take him 4 to 6 weeks, which puts him well within the time frame before the election. So this is going to be very interesting. Donald Trump is finding himself in a corner that he cannot get out of. The interesting thing is going to be to see how he's going to react to this. And I can almost guarantee you it ain't going to be good. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, we are in the home stretch. Let's see if this old guy's got it in him. I mean, you think about it. I did about 7 or 8 TikToks. I did a podcast with Dennis. I did a podcast that wasn't worth a shit because there was no audio. Now I'm in my third situation, my third podcast of the day, but I'm in the home stretch the last half hour. Thank God I have an endless supply of words. I don't always speak with quality, but I got quantity by the buttload. There was an interesting thing that happened yesterday. And what's going on with this thing is really intriguing. You remember Hunter Biden was going to plead guilty to misdemeanor tax charges, and that was going to be over. Well, then there was a problem with it, and he ended up pleading not guilty. And what we presumed was going to happen was that he was going to go back, renegotiate with the prosecution team, cut another deal, get it done, and be out of the way. That didn't happen. Apparently, there was an impasse between them, and something else happened yesterday that made this even more intriguing. The Justice Department has elevated the federal prosecutor investigating President Joe Biden's son, Hunter, to special counsel status. Attorney General Merrick Garland announced that yesterday. Now, the move coincided with the collapse of the plea deal, as I mentioned, that the prosecutors previously reached with Hunter Biden. Now, Garland said that the Delaware U.S. Attorney David Weiss, who, by the way, was appointed by Donald Trump, and he was also kept on the case. Now, when Joe Biden took office, he could have fired David Weiss, hired some sycophant to let his son off, but he didn't do that. He kept the guy that Donald Trump appointed and let him continue the investigation into Hunter Biden. And now, over this whole time, the Republicans always complained, well, he couldn't do this, he couldn't do that, he should have been made a special counsel. And they were basically saying that Hunter Biden was getting a slap on the wrist and it should have been much, much worse. So anyway, the plea deal collapses. People are claiming there's other information, and there might be. Let's be perfectly honest. Hunter Biden was kind of a fuck up. He was a drug addict. Now, I had somebody come to my post and say, I disagree with you calling him a fuck up. Being a drug addict is a disease. Now, I didn't say that he was a fuck up because he was a drug addict. I understand it's a disease. He's a fuck up because of the things he's done, both financial, both criminal with the gun situation, with having a baby that he wouldn't acknowledge. He's a fuck up. At least he was a fuck up at one point. I don't know if he's better now. He's presumably not on drugs, and he paid back all the back taxes that he had. So at least he's on the right track right now. Joe Biden didn't cut him any slack. He kept David Weiss on when he didn't have to. Now they've made him a special counsel, which gives him much more power to deal all across the country, not just in Delaware or one state. People are thinking there are some things in California, maybe Florida, and some other places. So he now has that opportunity. Garland said this. He said, on Tuesday of this week, Mr. Weiss advised me that in his judgment, his investigation had reached a stage which he should continue his work as a special counsel, and he asked to be so appointed. Garland said, upon considering his request as well as the extraordinary circumstances relating to this matter, I have concluded that it's in the public interest to appoint him as a special counsel. Now, we know that Hunter Biden agreed to plea out, and that didn't work. He paid his taxes. Everything's in the mix. But of course, we know the Republicans were whining and crying about it. The Republicans said, we need a special counsel on this. Why didn't they put a special counsel on this? So now Merrick Garland does that. And what do you think the Republicans are saying? Oh, they don't like it a bit. They don't like it a bit. Now, putting the special counsel on this case, huge development. It's become one of the biggest political stories in Washington. And frankly, I hate the story because it has no bearing on anything. It's about a private citizen. The Republicans have tried and tried and tried to connect Hunter Biden with Joe Biden and the business deals and the bribe of $5 million and all that shit. But they have yet to come up with one shred of evidence or one witness that is credible. And I started thinking about this for a while, and I was thinking about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. And I came to this assessment. Joe Biden's been in Congress, 40, 50 years? He was a vice president. He is the president of the United States. Does Joe Biden really need to have his fuck up, drug addicted son go out and make rain and get him a way to grift money? If Joe Biden wanted to grift money, does he really need Hunter Biden to do that? I mean, let's be honest. Lauren Boebert, who was a joke, came into Congress, broke as a joke, and somehow she's now a millionaire. Don't you think Joe Biden's as smart as Lauren Boebert? He's been in Washington, D.C. like 20 times longer than she has. Does Joe Biden really need Hunter Biden to get money if that was his interest? Well, clearly there's no evidence that he tried to grift money. And even if he wanted to grift money, he doesn't need Hunter Biden to do it. One guy came to my page and he goes, well, that's how much you know. They're just trying to have a middleman to stop the paper trail so Joe Biden can hide the money trail. Really? Is that what you're telling me? So you want a middleman to try to cover you getting a bunch of money. So let's pick, I don't know, my son. That's fucking brilliant. This is how Republicans and Trump-fucks think. They open their mouths and they don't think about what they're saying. Now, as I said, Republicans considered the charges against Hunter Biden that he was going to plead to a slap on the wrist. Now that there is a special counsel being assigned to this case, a special counsel who was appointed by Donald Trump, guess what? The Republicans are mad about it. Oh, they're just trying to cover it up. You see, that's the point with the Republican Party. It's not about facts. It's not about truth. It's not about law. It's about perception. It's about the narrative. I'm convinced what they're mad about is that they saw this Hunter Biden thing as a strong case to bring to the election in 2024. It's not, but it's all they've got. So by appointing this special counsel, it takes away some of their talking points. Now they can't complain about it, but they do. They say, oh no, it's just a cover up with this special counsel. They just got done telling us we need a special counsel. They get a special counsel and now they're crying about it. That's oh so fucking Republican. But the special counsel is going to look into Hunter Biden's case. And here's what I have a problem with. This person, Andrew Weiss, has been investigating this case for 5 fucking years. That means the vast majority, or at least half of the case, was during the Trump administration with the Trump FBI and the Trump DOJ. They found nothing. And he finally, excuse me, I can't edit out coughs when I'm on video. So anyway, they've investigated this thing for 5 fucking years and found nothing. If they had found something in the first 2.5 years, Trump's DOJ probably would have sent out an indictment and filed some charges, but they didn't. So now it's during the Trump or Biden administration, 2.5 years in, and now they're stirring things up about it, even though there's nothing there. Again, it goes back to what I've said before. It had nothing to do with facts or truth or anything like that. All it is an attempt to try to smear Joe Biden, and it's not working. So they figured, well, at least we can bitch about the fact that we told them they should get a special counsel and this guy couldn't do all the things he wanted to do. So it's all a cover up by Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. But now that they've hired the special counsel and given them all kinds of independence from the Justice Department, then they bitch about it because it took away one of their talking points. Now, this special counsel will have authority over the entire country, presumably to come up with new evidence. But again, he's been looking for evidence for 5 years. Now maybe he can go to California or Florida and find some more evidence, but he was never really restricted before. The Republicans said he was, but he himself said, no, I had full reign to do whatever I wanted. You wonder, is Merrick Garland just caving into the Republicans or is he playing the Republicans? I don't really know. Merrick Garland doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would be sneaky or trying to play him. I don't know if they're just trying to appease them or if in fact they're trying to do something to whitewash whatever Hunter Biden did. I would assume when they were going to have him plea out, they would have come up with something more than the misdemeanors that he was going to plea out. So it's going to be interesting to see how this does play out, because instead of a plea deal, they're probably going to go to trial. And this could be much tougher for Hunter Biden. It's going to cost him more money, and it's a possibility he could go to jail for it. Now, if all he did was tax crimes and they're misdemeanors, frankly, nobody who's ever had that has gone through as much as Hunter Biden has done. It's not a slap on the wrist. In fact, he's been treated harsher than most people with these crimes. So they're going to have to come up with some other crimes. But can they? What we know about the Republicans, they keep talking about evidence, they keep talking about witnesses, but they delivered jack shit. So I doubt that they will. And again, this particular story irritates me because it really has no bearing on anything. There's been no proof that Hunter Biden had any kind of business dealing with his father and grifting money that way. There's no evidence of it. And this special counsel will not be able to find it either, because everybody they brought up has said, yeah, no, that didn't happen. You got to give them credit for giving the old college try, though, because fuck, they keep running this through the ringer. They keep losing, and they just don't fucking stop. Now, there was an interesting story, and I don't know what this will mean in the end, but it's interesting to talk about. Two conservative law professors, they're arguing that Donald Trump is currently ineligible to serve as president again due to a section of the Constitution that prohibits anyone who has engaged in insurrection from holding office. Gentlemen's names are William Baude of the University of Chicago and Michael Stokes Paulson of the University of St. Thomas. They explain their conclusion in an article set to be published in the University of Pennsylvania's Law Review. Now, the constitutional scholars, get this, they're constitutional scholars. If anybody knows about the Constitution, it's these motherfuckers. But to add to that, they are all both active in the Federalist Society. You know who the Federalist Society is, right? They're that big group, that conservative group owned by or run by Leonard Leo, you know, Clarence Thomas's best buddy, his pimp, hooking him up with all the BFF billionaires. Well, these are the people that basically take the role of picking the candidates for Supreme Court and for federal judges. Just to give you an idea who they are, they picked Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and who else? Who's the other one? Gorsuch. So that gives you an idea what kind of credibility they have. They are also big buddies with Clarence Thomas and John Robert and Alito. I mean, this organization basically has get-togethers where they pull in Supreme Court justices and billionaires, and they kind of match them up. And all the things we've heard about Clarence Thomas, he has benefited mightily from these get-togethers and these introductions. And I don't know, but these are the same people that are now saying that Donald Trump now, before anything happens, cannot run for president, cannot become president, cannot hold office unless, and here's the only option, the only way out for Donald Trump, according to them, unless 2/3 of Congress decides to grant him amnesty for his conduct on January 6th. 2/3 of Congress. Think he could get that? No, fuck no. Now, the provision they studied is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which states that any person who took an oath to support the U.S. Constitution and then engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, are prohibited from holding any government office. And again, the ban can only be lifted if 2/3 vote by each house of Congress. Which you have to understand, we hear a lot of talk about the 14th Amendment. It was adopted in 1868, right after the Civil War, and is most noteworthy for extending civil and legal rights to formerly enslaved people. Now, Baud and Paulson noted that the Section 3 of the amendment was designed to address a specific problem that arose after the Civil War. Southern states sent men who violated their oaths to the Constitution by supporting secession to serve in Congress after their defeat. So we're now 150 years later. The events surrounding the efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election, that sparked new scholarly, judicial, and political interest in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. We've heard a lot of people talking about this. Now, it's one thing if I talk about it or somebody else on TikTok or some other podcast talks about it. But if it's a constitutional scholar who's connected with the Federalist Society, who are basically constitutional originalists, that's a different deal. That's an entirely different deal. Now, whether this will get any traction and go anywhere, it's hard to say. It's impossible to say. But it's nice to have it in the conversation, especially from some conservatives. Now, the professors explored the provision at length, parsing whether Trump violated it and how it could be applied and enforced. They concluded that Section 3 is legally self-executing and its disqualification, where triggered, just is. Doesn't talk about any convictions or anything like that. If he did it, he's done. Now we'll see, like I say, if we can get any traction off of this thing, because it's going to take some work. But the people who can enforce this, these two guys determined that it may and must be followed, applied, honored, obeyed, enforced, and carried out by anyone whose job it is to figure out whether someone is legally qualified to office. Now, who does that include? That includes state election officials, state legislatures, and governors, Congress, the White House, and the state and federal judges. They said the bottom line is that Donald Trump both engaged in insurrection or rebellion and gave aid and comfort to others engaging in such conduct. I think that's pretty clear. I mean, we've seen the videotape of him doing same. Now, within the original meaning of those terms as employed in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, they concluded he should not be able to run for re-election. It's one thing to say that. And even though conservatives have said that, Donald Trump and the Republicans, they like to game the situation, you know. Rules and laws don't apply to them. They only apply to everybody else. But I'm excited that they're talking about this. Let's hope it gets moving and people take it up, because it's legitimate. You talk about Republicans and they talk about, well, what it says specifically in the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't specifically identify abortion, so that's why we did what we did. Okay, this is specifically identified in the Constitution. So based on your theories, this should be a thing. This should get done. Do you remember that dipshit doctor of Donald Trump, Ronnie Jackson, who said that Donald Trump was a physical specimen like no other, that he could live 150 years? This guy is a dipshit. Well, this dipshit is a Republican, and he ended up being a representative in the House of Representatives. But he ran a little up against the law recently. And this is interesting because this is how Republicans act. We support the blue. Now, do you really? Listen to this. Former physician for Donald Trump and current Representative Ronnie Jackson, Republican from Texas. He's a dipshit. He is a Trumplafuck. You know his name. You've seen him. He's a goofball. Apparently, he threatened a state trooper in the midst of an altercation with authorities at a rodeo last month. This comes out of Dallas Morning News. Jackson threatened to beat the state trooper and bury a West Texas sheriff in the next election after deputies pushed him to the ground and handcuffed him in the July 29th incident, authorities said, according to the report. This is wonderful. Yeah, these Republicans are tough guys, and they support the blue. But in this case, he said he was going to bury him in the next election. Donnie, you're just a representative from Texas. You don't have any more power than what you can do in the House of Representatives, and that is going away. But you're a big shot now. You're a representative, so you think you have omnipotent power, but you don't. Now, this incident occurred in White Deer, around 40 miles northeast of Amarillo. Have you ever been to Amarillo? I went to Amarillo one time. I'd always heard of the town. It's in Texas. It's kind of cool. I was, you know, parts of it were nice, but a lot of it was really not the greatest. It wasn't what I expected. Anyway, Jackson previously said he was trying to help a teenager experiencing a seizure at the time of the incident and claimed to be the victim of overzealous law enforcement response. He was helping a teenager having a seizure. Sounds to me like Ronnie was beating up a teenager, and now he's making a lame excuse. But Carson County Sheriff Tam Terry's report paints a very different picture, describing the retired Rear Admiral as being confrontational and cooperative during the and uncooperative during the incident. Deputies asked Jackson to step back at least 4 times before detaining him so emergency responders could render aid to the girl. He's a doctor, so he thinks he's God. Chief Deputy Sheriff J.C. Blackburn said Jackson continued screaming profanity about the trooper even after being released from handcuffs, the report says. Trooper Blackburn said, I physically had to hold Congressman Jackson back from going towards Trooper Young. Jackson continued to yell and scream from inside the vehicle about who he was. Congressman Jackson also stated that he was going to call the governor after Blackburn pushed Jackson into the congressman's car. Now, Terry did witness the incident, but called Jackson at his request, the report said. Jackson stated that the deputies used bad judgment. Yeah, you'd know all about bad judgment, dumb fuck. That the situation needed to be investigated and there better be consequences. Oh, there's going to be consequences, Ronnie. It's going to be you that's going to get the consequences. He stated that he was not threatening me, but that in the next election, he would pull hell and high water and come and bury me in the next election. Will you do that, Ronnie? Show us how tough you are. He ended the conversation with the statement, game on, the sheriff wrote. Oh, yeah, he's a tough guy. He's an incredibly tough guy. If you've ever seen this guy speak, he's a fucking goof. He was a goof when he was Donald Trump's doctor. He's a goof now as a representative. And he's who you'd expect to be representing Texas these days. Now we have another unhinged Republican. Michigan State Representative, guy by the name of Matt Maddock. He happens to be the husband of one of the 16 fake electors in the state who were indicted on multiple felonies last month. He is warning that MAGA loyalists could escalate their violence to the level of war in an audio recording reported by the Messenger on Friday. Oh, we've heard that a lot. Oh, it's going to get dangerous out there. There's going to be a civil war. But every time they have the opportunity, nobody shows, you gutless pieces of shit. So Maddock went on to say, if the government continues to weaponize these departments against conservatives and the citizens that are then the taxpayers, you know what's going to happen to this country? Matt Maddock asks, according to the audio obtained by the Messenger. Now, after the attendees at the event shout possibilities, Maddock answers his own question. Someone's going to get so pissed off, they're going to shoot someone. Like that dumb fuck in Utah. Someone shot someone, but it was the Trumplefuck that got shot and killed. He goes on to say that's what's going to happen, or we're going to have a civil war or some sort of revolutions. That's where this is going. Such a tough guy. Now, he's just a Michigan dude, Michigan rep. The comments which Maddock made days after former President Donald Trump was indicted by the Department of Justice for his actions on January 6th came at what was billed a Free the 16 Electors poolside party at the Maddock's home, hosted by Grand New Party PAC, an organization that is working to renew the Republican Party from within. This was reported by Dan Merica. Renew the Republican Party from within. This Maddock guy doesn't realize what they need to get rid of is people like him in order to renew this party. You don't want more of the same because you're fucking losing. Jesus Christ. Now, this event was intended to raise proceeds for their legal fund to fight evil AG Dana Nessel, the state AG who indicted these fake electors. I got to tell you, these fake electors are upset. When it first happened, we didn't give it much thought, but these people fucked around and found out, and they are in trouble like nobody's business. Nothing they expected. They thought they were heroes, and now they're going to be convicts. The fake electors, including his wife and former Michigan GOP co-chair Mishan Maddock, are not the only ones facing legal consequences. The fake Trump electors in Georgia, including state party chair David Schaefer, are under criminal investigation by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. We may see them with an indictment when Fani comes out. And the false electors in Wisconsin are facing a civil suit brought by two of the real electors and a voter. Now, the Michigan GOP has descended into chaos in recent months. We've been hearing about that after failed Secretary of State and QAnon conspiracy theorist Christina Caramo took over as chair. Party officials are now warring with each other over the unclear state of their finances, culminating in a physical brawl at a GOP meeting that put one person in the hospital and has state officials investigating. We talked about that. A lot of these Republican organizations are going broke, Michigan among them. They can't grift money anymore. Nobody's willing to give them money because they're foolish, they're criminals, they're corrupt. So they've got all kinds of problems. They've got 16 fake electors that are probably going to go to jail. God knows how many other people in Michigan and in other states are going to go to jail. They're going to have fundraisers. They're going to try to fight this. But the fact of the matter is, they committed the crimes. There's evidence. There's witnesses. There's documentation that they did it. They're not going to get away with this. They're not going to get out from underneath it. No way. There's no fucking way. They can whine and cry all they want, but you see what they're doing. They're fighting amongst themselves. And that's where this is headed. Not only in Michigan, but throughout the country. These people are going to get caught up in criminal trials and lawsuits, and they're going to be low on money, and they're going to get angry, and they're going to end up fighting amongst themselves. This is where the problem is. Much like Jack Smith's case, where all the witnesses are Republican, the Republicans are going to bring themselves down. That's what's going to happen. That is what is currently happening. So we'll see how it all shakes out, but I wouldn't bet on the Republicans at this point. You want to renew the Republican Party? Well, you've got to do some wholesale changes at this point, because this party is sick, literally sick, and it's dying. It's on life support right now. And over the next 6 to 8 months, you're going to lose. Too much is going to come out. Too many people are going to be indicted and charged, and the Republican Party just will not survive. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast for the second fucking time. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.